From Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje's brutal battle to Gaethje putting it all on the line for his next fight in hopes of a shot at the lightweight title, here's why Gaethje versus Poirier might be the rematch of this century. Well, for starters, let's look at how their first fight went. The last time Gaethje and Poirier faced off all the way back in 2018 for the UFC on Fox 29. Jeez, if you go back and look at that fight, you can really feel the hunger these fighters had, back when they still had to make a name for themselves. I would venture as far as to say that after their fight, it became certain that they were destined for fame in the company in the years to come. Both fighters were at the top of their game and played to their strengths. Gaethje came in with some of his signature leg kicks, the likes of which can rarely ever be rivaled in strength, and Poirier had to keep up with that somehow, so he stuck to his excellent striking and resilience in the face of the pain Gaethje brought. The insane fight had a knockout conclusion in favor of Diamond Poirier. In fact, it went a long duration to the fourth round, and you could really see the pain and weight accumulate in both fighters' bodies in the later rounds. Seeing the names Gaethje and Poirier should already tell you that the fans were in for a full-on striking-based match. Gaethje is known to have a very strong chin in his division, but everything has a limit.
The best thing about getting choked out is, there's nothing really consequential to your health, especially long-term health. That's what I'm always looking out for. I said I have 5 wars left, and I haven't had one since I said that, so.
And Poirier knew that, so he just kept on punching him until Herb Dean had to stop the fight. No sane man would ever want to be on the receiving end of either of these fighters' punches, and that's exactly what made their facing off an absolutely legendary fight. Now, all these years later, both fighters have grown so much stronger in their individual careers. After all, since 2018, these fighters have been through some of the toughest fights the division has to offer. The Louisiana-based fighter Poirier has had a total of 8 fights since he last faced off against Gaethje. In fact, it's honestly kind of hard not to know what Poirier has been up to, because he literally had one of the most iconic fights in recent years against the most notorious fighter in the UFC. Yeah, that's right. Poirier fought Conor McGregor not only once, but twice. What's even crazier is that Poirier won the fight both times. What's even more hype is that this was a whole trilogy fight situation, and Poirier preserved through all that pressure. I guess he earned the nickname Diamond for a reason. And Gaethje wasn't lacking after all this time either. Justin went toe-to-toe with some of the fiercest fighters in the division. And I mean some really big names, including Khabib Nurmagomedov, Charles Oliveira, Tony Ferguson, and Edson Barboza. Now, Justin Gaethje is truly a force to be reckoned with. Some UFC fans say that after fighting Gaethje, Tony Ferguson has never been the same. I mean, Gaethje's striking has improved to the point that it's literally become a career-altering force for his enemies. Seriously, he's become such a strong fighter that almost all of his last 8 fights since Poirier have been either performances or fights of the night. This next fight is just gonna be on a whole other level now. What's scary about this fight is that both fighters know each other's strengths and weaknesses because of their previous fights. I mean, the caliber that these two fighters perform on is now very complex, so these fights become insanely technical games. You see, to the layman, Justin Gaethje will look like he's just going on an absolute rampage with his punches often, but his striking is actually very smart. When Gaethje throws his overhead punches, he keeps his head down, and that makes it very hard to counter his moves. And because of how hard his punches connect, it looks like he's just throwing wild haymakers. Dustin's striking is also right up there with Gaethje though, as his striking accuracy is very pinpoint, and he often knows exactly when to drop his guard and counter with impeccable timing. Dustin needs to watch out though, because of how things turned out when he last fought Gaethje. The rival absolutely went ham on Poirier's legs with calf kicks, and Dustin even said later that those were the strongest leg kicks he's ever received. Well, especially so because those leg kicks were so strong that Dustin's quads were partially torn after the fight. Yikes, I feel bad for Gaethje's sparring partners. Many UFC fans believe that Dustin might have improved upon this flaw since he started to check his opponent's leg kicks. Some even speculate that McGregor's leg broke from the Poirier fight because of a leg kick that Poirier checked. Anyway, Poirier recently even came out saying that the upcoming fight makes him nervous. Let's think about that for a second. Gaethje merely expressing interest in fighting Dustin made him nervous. Well, Poirier's official statement in an interview was that the fights that make him nervous are exactly the ones he picks. Obviously, we all knew Poirier would never back down from a challenge. After all, you have to be some sort of masochist to be at his level in the UFC. Poirier even said that when he hears a name and it makes him nervous, he channels that into motivation.
That was going to get him away in the first round, but he's a champ, man. The game plan was to take my time. I brawled again when I wasn't supposed to. The game plan was to take my time and let the fight unfold, take him to the third, fourth, fifth, and pick him apart.
Apparently, his last fight with Michael Chandler gave him the same kind of motivation, and we all know how that went. Long story short, Dustin ended up choking Chandler out to win the fight, so it seems like Dustin's nervousness probably shouldn't be mistaken for his weakness. I could never understand how someone could ever be motivated to risk getting knocked out by Justin Gaethje. That's why Poirier isn't any less scary than Gaethje. Dustin said that he's waiting for them to just say the name of his next opponent, and if it just so happens to be Gaethje, which it most probably will be, he'll be ready for it. Honestly, Dana White doesn't even have to do anything. This fight is building hype on its own. Justin's epic call-out, which started this all, makes it seem like he's putting it all on the line in his next few fights. All these talks of a rematch started with an insanely hyped-up post-fight interview by Gaethje on UFC 286. After knocking out Rafael Fiziev, Gaethje was asked about what he saw next in his career, and that's when our guy expressed interest in fighting Dustin. What's remarkable is that he seemed oddly emotional. His quotes from the event expressed how hard it is to keep up with the competition in the UFC. Gaethje talked about how soon he won't be able to fight like he used to. So his next run for the title is going to be him putting everything he has into it. Obviously, this is a very sad statement to hear from a fighter as talented as Justin, but this spells out absolute disaster for Poirier. Gaethje's resolve is probably going to be unbreakable now if it wasn't already. However harsh Gaethje's words may seem, they have some truth to them. With his generation slowly fading from the UFC, Poirier is also a part of Gaethje's generation of fighters, so we don't know how many more years the Diamond still has left in him either. This means they're both going to fight like their whole careers depend on it. If Dana White sees fit, the winner of this fight could also eventually go forward to face the current lightweight champion Islam Makhachev for a title fight. Anyway, that's all about why Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier might be the rematch of the century.